Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltiziak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. Welcome to another episode. Folks, this episode kicks off our preview of the Detroit Lions NFC North divisional opponents and what we can expect out of them in the 2025 season. In this episode, we're going to focus on the Green Bay Packers. What can Lions fans expect out of Green Bay and Jordan Love in company this year? The Packers have added some offensive help. Will that be enough to change things for Green Bay when they face the Lions? Now, we're going to speak with a reporter who's covered Green Bay training camp to get a firsthand account and hear what he is expecting from this squad, plus how he sees the division going in 2025. Now, one point of note is we did record this episode before the Micah Parsons trade, so that is not factored in, but the rest of the roster analysis is still quite intriguing. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Theo Riddick, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is Cam Ezer, sports reporter for the CBS affiliate WFRV-TV out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. He is also a Syracuse graduate, and if WFRV-TV sounds familiar, folks, it's because Lauren Helmbrecht was our guest the last couple seasons out of Green Bay. She no longer works in the Green Bay market, but fortunately, Cam here does. He did work with her as well, and look forward to hearing what he can share on the Green Bay training camp. Cam, thanks for joining us, and appreciate you taking us up on this opportunity.
Of course. Yeah, it's weird taking over for Lauren or taking over. Yeah, she did such a great job. I remember when I first got to Green Bay, she was a TA for one of my classes when I was a junior at Syracuse. So I had known her for a couple of years up to that point, and working with her was a blast. And she set the blueprint. So a lot of pressure for me, a lot of, those are some big shoes that I have to fill. I know it's a cliche term, but they really are.
It is funny how things come full circle like that. And that's awesome that you had the opportunity to work with her after, that school experience at Syracuse as well.
It's really cool, yes.
Well, let me set a few things up for the listeners. Just a quick recap from last year. Lions finished 15-2, Vikings 14-3, Packers 11-6, and the Bears 5-12. That's how the NFC North rounded out. Now, Green Bay draft picks, Matthew Golden, wide receiver, first round, Savion Williams, wide receiver, drafted in the third round. They also picked up an offensive tackle in the second round, all things that could and should help Jordan Love this year. So let's start with the quarterback. He's had an injury on his non-throwing hand, but he's back practicing. Where do things stand with Jordan Love? What have you seen out of him in training camp this year so far?
Yeah, right now, not so much in the current setting because he still has a cast on his non-throwing hand that is a little bigger toward his thumb because, of course, he tore a ligament in that thumb. It sort of came as a surprise to us because he was only planning on playing the 2 drives against the Jets in the preseason opener, or at least one if it was successful. And then if it was a 3-and-out, which it was, then would only play the second drive. And it was on that last play of the second drive against the Jets where tried to scramble around the pocket and a helmet went right into his thumb. Didn't think much of it, but then practiced the next day, or I think it was 2 days later on that Monday. He had a wrap around that thumb, and all of us in the media kind of pondered. Obviously, we don't want to speculate, but we pondered, is that something just, it almost looked like he was covering up a bruise, but then Brian Gutekunst, the general manager of the Packers, walked in and told us immediately following that practice on that Tuesday morning saying Jordan elected to have the surgery. So right now, he's just taking a lot of individual reps, and with everything that includes getting the ball from the center or handing it off to a running back, he is not partaking in any of that. Instead, he is behind the other quarterbacks or watching on, or like every NFL team wants to say, taking mental reps in that regard. Whenever there is a snap under center, he is mimicking it by just having the ball in his hand automatically, so he doesn't have to take a snap or receive the ball through the air or under center. But right now he looks good throwing the football. Many have asked Matt LaFleur and even like Malik Willis and Sean Mannion, who everyone will remember that name as a vet in this league and now as the quarterback's coach, Have you guys ever dealt with this? Have you seen something? Does it affect you a lot in terms of having an injury on your non-throwing hand? And Malik Willis, the backup QB, gave a little bit of an update and said, well, if you're a left-handed quarterback, it'll affect you. So he kind of made a sarcastic remark there. So right now things are looking good in terms of the recovery timeline. Should be fine for week 1. Before then, he looked great up until that preseason game where people were a little concerned of that 3-and-out against the Jets and didn't really move the ball on offense in those first couple of drives. But in terms of his camaraderie with his receivers, and him and Golden have gotten along really well, things are looking good with him.
All right. Well, I mean, it's year 3 as the starter for the Packers for him. And so I guess, what are the expectations this year? Is there any pressure? And how's the fan base viewing him right now?
Isn't it the phrase pressure is a privilege? I don't know if that's come out of any of the mouths of the Packers players, but I think they all realize they're at the point where the talent is there. The results have been there the last few years in terms of making the playoffs. This team is young, and they're the youngest team in the NFL to make the playoffs the last 2 seasons. That's out the window. This team knows it's Super Bowl or bust. I remember talking with a lot of these guys around the OTAs mini camp period. And whenever we'd ask a question like that, the remarks that they would give the last 2 years were so different than it was entering this year. This is Super Bowl or bust. They realize that the potential of this team and the players they have brought in, it's Super Bowl all the way. And that is the only thing on the back of their minds, knowing they made the divisional round. They made the wild card round. This is a team that is now viewed as a perennial playoff team in the NFC. So all expectations are, you make it to the big game, and if you don't make it to the big game, there's a lot to correct, even if the season looks good up to that point, or you run into a buzzsaw like the Eagles or the Lions. They want to be in the upper echelon of the NFC. They feel like they deserve to be there. And let's just say the fan base knows that that's the expectation, because think about it. The Packers have been more than mediocre the last 15 years, right? Like, this team has gone to NFC championships. They've had MVPs as quarterbacks. And instead of making it to the Super Bowl, they've always fallen short somewhere around the divisional or NFC championship round. So they all realize, like, they're due to make a Super Bowl. And now with the team where a lot of these guys are going into their 3rd or 4th years, they feel like this is the team to do it.
All right. And then the fan base, are they still pretty excited around Jordan Love? Are you feeling that's still the case there, or is there some apprehension or questioning setting in?
No, not at all. Everyone's very, very excited. They've all taken to Jordan Love as they did with Favre or Rodgers. Now, I understand that with those 2 quarterbacks in their 3rd years, when both of them were turning 27, they took their team to the Super Bowl. So there's always going to be trends and, hey, that happened with them, so it could happen with him. And because of the success of the Packers over the last 30 years, the expectation is Jordan Love should take this team to a Super Bowl. And I think what he's proven is that he can, even in just his 3rd year as a starter. Because, I mean, Matthew, you mentioned 30 years as a starter. This is his 6th year in the system. Like, we're getting to the point of calling Jordan Love a vet. And I think he realizes that too. And he's become more of a vocal leader. And I think that's what fans have enjoyed seeing, is he's come out of that shell of being the backup to Aaron Rodgers. This is his team. Like, he is no longer that guy. I don't know if you read that Players Tribune article, but the vulnerability of Jordan Love and about his journey and to get to this point. And he said straight up in that article, among the many other, great things about his trek to the NFL, like, I'm not Aaron Rodgers' backup. Like, this is my story. And I feel like this is the first season, because all the injuries he suffered last year, where everyone is realizing, okay, Jordan Love knows where he is at the point of his career. So, yeah, the fan base is very, very excited. Trust me, all those 12 jerseys have turned into 10 jerseys with Jordan Love.
Well, and I mean, I guess it lines up for them to be excited if this is his 3rd year and those other things happened in the 3rd year. Anyone that likes that number 3 is thinking, hey, maybe history will repeat itself. That's, in the state of Wisconsin and pulling for the Packers. So if that's, if Green Bay is going to be successful this season, Jordan Love's going to have to connect with some pass catchers. You've got a plethora of wide receivers. Often people have said you have a lot of number 2s. You're looking for someone to step up to be a number 1. Very talented wide receivers out there, and you added 2 more to the mix this year. What are you seeing out of this wide receiving group, and is there anybody that's standing out that you think might take that number 1 spot?
I remember walking into the locker room last year and all the talk outside of you're going to Brazil. What is that going to be like? All the talk surrounded who is the wide receiver one? Are you concerned that there's not a wide receiver one? Remember, Jaden Reed broke Sterling Sharp's rookie reception record 2 years ago. So you thought, oh, Reed's going to take that jump in year two. Can he avoid the sophomore slump? Maybe he is your number one, that draft pick out of Michigan State. But then you still have Christian Watson, who the expectations are so high on him because in terms of an explosive play type guy, he's very similar to a bigger, taller Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Someone who can go get the ball and has that type of potential. But then you have Romeo Doubs, who's your hands catcher on slant routes. He could also utilize his speed to get behind DB. So you're right. With the conversation of wide receiver 1, 2, 3, it was shot down a lot last year, all of them saying we have depth. We don't need a wide receiver one. But I think everyone realizes that when a team does have a wide receiver one, it takes them a long way. The Kansas City Chiefs might have something to say against that because they haven't really had a wide receiver one. I think entering this year, the chatter has diminished a bit on that because you add Matthew Golden, like you said, in the first round, you add Savion Williams in the third round, and then all the injuries that have surfaced, right? Christian Watson tore his ACL to close out the season last year. Romeo Doubs, he suffered 2 concussions last year. He just came off a back injury that he suffered in practice last week. Didn't even play against the Colts because of that. Dontavian Wicks has been out with a calf injury for a long period of time. Jaden Reed was just in a boot for the last week and has been visibly limping at practice this week. So as much as I want to say, hey, this guy has stood out among the rest, all they're doing right now is standing on the sideline because they can't even play and they can't even practice. So because of last year and all the chatter around wide receiver one and everyone kind of putting that to bed and saying we have a lot of pass catchers that can make an impact. I mean, no one thought Tucker Kraft would have the second season that he did. So I think that's been put to bed for 2 reasons. One, because they proved last year they didn't need a number one wide receiver. Now, many would say why they weren't successful against the Eagles and beyond were because they didn't have one. I would disagree with that and say the depth has helped them. It was just injuries that kind of took their season for a spin last year. And number 2, they just haven't played. So right now, Matthew Golden is your pseudo wide receiver 1 or 2. And Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, the top 2 cornerbacks on this team, have been guarding Romeo Doubs and Matthew Golden. I mean, Doubs is in his 4th year in a contract year, and Golden's is a rookie. So yeah. I don't think that we've seen enough from these receivers because they can't prove anything. So yes, a lot of depth on this team, and I think that can only bode well for this team. They have a lot of young guys, and someone steps out on the scene, great, he can be your wide receiver 1. But right now, I think we're cooling it on those talks.
All right, that's a lot of great information about the wide receiver room. Let's look at the running back room. Josh Jacobs, he is back at running back. A great pickup last season. As soon as that happened, I knew what was going to happen because I thought that highly of Josh Jacobs. What type of balance is Green Bay going to deploy on offense between the run and pass game? And, he's still feeling really good about that running back room.
Against the Colts in that second preseason game, Adam Stenavich called plays, the offensive coordinator. Now, obviously, the NFL, they have this weird way of assigning who's your OC, your DC, and your head coach, where a lot of the times the head coach will call the plays, which will render one of the OC or DC kind of irrelevant and make him more of a position group coach. Stenavich is more of an offensive line coach. Now, in that Colts game, he acted as the play caller, which Matt LaFleur likes to do in the preseason, where he kind of takes a step back and allows Steno to take in that role because he's not used to doing that. He's more so, focuses on the O-line with Luke Butkus. And Steno called a lot of running plays. Now, I expect that during the season, especially with the injuries and not knowing if the receivers will be back in time. Matt LaFleur said he hopes that Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks will be back for week 1 against the Lions. But that's all he said is, I hope so. He didn't provide a lot of clarity, meaning this team will have to rely a lot on their running back room. Luckily, Josh Jacobs was the first Packers running back in 20 years to have over 1,300 yards on the ground last year. So you have, a guy back there that can take on a lot of the pressure, you could say, or a lot of the weight on his shoulders. He's willing to take that on. I mean, at a certain point, we'd go into the locker room after the game and say, Josh, are you exhausted? Like, geez, this guy, I know that he's used to running the football, but my God, are they going to give you the ball you're running 20, 25 times per game? And he said, I love it. I love getting out there and doing that. So I think the balance and why they even brought in Josh Jacobs is they know that they could use him a lot or they could use him a little, right? They have the opportunity to do both. Now, the problem with that running back room, and I think there's a problem and a good thing, right, is that Marshawn Lloyd, their third round pick from last year, got injured again. He missed pretty much all of his rookie year last year with an injury. Then he suffered a groin ailment earlier on in training camp. And everyone's like, when is this guy going to get healthy? Now, in this past game against the Colts, he suffered a hamstring injury. So now you're worried a little bit about him. We talked to Ben Sermons, the running back coach of the Packers. He said, I've never seen someone suffer worse luck. Like, we don't know what's going to happen with Marshawn Lloyd, and he's supposed to be your number 2 or 3 back, and he's barely played in the NFL. Emmanuel Wilson's just coming off a knee injury. They thought it was a torn ACL. Luckily, it wasn't. And he is more of your scat back. He can get out to the outside. He's not really your bull rusher like an A.J. Dillon was. Then you have Israel Abanikanda and Amar Johnson, 2 running backs that have made their names known in the preseason. But again, it's the preseason. So right now, the confidence lies in Josh Jacobs, and that's kind of it. So just as you have this wide receiving room that's so deep and you don't know who you're going to get on a given day, with the running back room, it's Josh Jacobs and maybe Emmanuel Wilson. So I think the depth is a bit of a concern there. Luckily, you have Jacobs, and he proved that he could stay healthy. He's durable last season. So the balance, like you just asked, it's a good thing to have because Jacobs can take on a lot of the load if the receiving room isn't up to par. But I think you worry a bit about what if Jacobs does get tired? What if he does get hurt? Obviously, knock on wood, he doesn't. There's not much depth in the running back room.
All right. Well, one of the things you brought up, which would affect the running back room and Jordan Love having time, is the offensive line. You know, you guys drafted a tackle this year in the second round. You took Jordan Morgan from Arizona in the first round last year. How is the offensive line looking?
The offensive line is very, wonky, I think is the best word to describe it, but it also has a solid base. So it's really weird. So like you said, they take Anthony Belton in that second round. People call him the Cadillac. That dude's huge. You stand up next to him, and I'm 6'4", but I don't weigh as much as a football player. But you walk up to these guys, you're like, my goodness, he's a big boy. He's 6'7" and upwards of 300 pounds. Like, this guy's big. He had 5 penalties alone in that first half against the Colts. There was a learning process to go with Anthony Belton. And I think when the Packers take anyone in the first couple rounds as an O-lineman, they realize there will be a learning process. Funny enough, that 2022 draft, when they took Rasheed Walker, Zach Tom, and Sean Ryan, and they took all 3 of them later in the draft, those 3 have actually panned out well for them rather than the earlier backs in the draft. But I think it's turning a corner. With Belton, yes, he has a lot to learn from, but he had a good second half against the Colts in that preseason. So maybe he can provide depth on that O-line. But right now, this is how it's looking. At right tackle, you have Zach Tom. He just signed into a massive extension, the biggest signing bonus, or I think it's guaranteed contract money in NFL history for a right tackle, over $30 million. So he's your right tackle. You just signed Aaron Banks to a 4-year, $77 million deal from the 49ers. But he's been in and out right now. He's suffered a back injury early on, and he's been dealing with this back ailment for a long period of time. He wasn't at practice yesterday, or was, but he wasn't in pads. And even when he's out there, he's been taking a lot of reps off. So you worry about his health, but he will be one of your guards, most likely that right guard. But Sean Ryan has proven over the last couple of years, ever since a very up and down rookie year, that maybe he can be your right guard or he can slide over to center. But because Josh Myers is now on the Jets, you bring in Elton Jenkins, who was your all-pro guard, and he's played tackle as well, and now he's your center. So now you're wondering, like, you have a solid base, right? You have Tom, you have Banks, you have Jenkins. Who is on the left side? I think the biggest problem with that is, and Banks might go on that left guard side as well. Biggest problem with that is now you have a competition. Rasheed Walker, who's been in the system for 4 years, started all 17 games last year, allowed only 3 sacks, had only 9 penalties, looked like the franchise left tackle for this team post the David Bakhtiari stage. But then you draft Jordan Morgan, like you said, who's had run at guard and tackle. And with Morgan, he only played 6 games last year. Shoulder injury sidelined him, put him on the IR for the rest of the season. But because Rasheed Walker's been out, Jordan Morgan's getting a majority of those left tackle reps, and he's been playing well. So we talked to the O-line coach for the Packers, Luke Butkus, and yes, that name is familiar. I think he is related to Dick Butkus. I think it's like his nephew or his great nephew or whatever it is. So he knows what he's talking about. He said it's a competition straight up between Rasheed Walker and Jordan Morgan at that left tackle spot, which is great. But at practice yesterday, Jordan Morgan really only ran reps at left guard because he can play guard and tackle. So again, you have a solid base, right? You have Tom Banks, Jenkins. You can throw in Ryan. You can throw in Jordan Morgan. Is Rasheed Walker healthy? Is he your left tackle? But Sean Ryan and Rasheed Walker are on contract years. So if you replace them on the O line, I mean, what are we talking about? Are those guys going to get butt hurt because they're in their contract years and they want to prove something? And then the crux of all of this, Matthew, is Jordan Love isn't taking reps with them because he's been hurt, right? So now is the
Right.
camaraderie there? Is it going to be fluid from having Malik Willis under center? Elton Jenkins was out the first 2 weeks of training camp or first week of training camp. So he wasn't even snapping the ball to Jordan Love before he got injured. Their first snaps together came a couple weeks ago, then Jordan Love got hurt. So again, solid base. You
Yep.
have your O linemen, but I think there's a lot of what ifs going into that week 1 game against the Lions.
All right. Well, again, yeah. So it sounds like there's injuries in this area as well that have kind of impacted the way the Packers may start the season and what the season could look like for them. Let's leave the offense, jump over to the defense. Where are the Packers most improved last year, and do you think that area is going to be a strength of their defense, or would it be
I
a
think
different
it's
spot?
Yeah, I think it's less about being most improved from what we've seen and more about what they want to improve upon. This team was top 5 in the NFL in takeaways last season. They forced 16 fumbles, I think it was. It's third in the NFL. A lot of interceptions. Of course, Xavier McKinney owned about half of them with 8 to lead the team. And that was a great signing and a great addition, of course, behind the cornerbacks that you know all too well and the Lions that did pretty well for themselves. But going into the offseason, Jeff Hafley, the DC, into his second year, he emphasized we want to take the ball away more, which is kind of shocking, right? You're top 3 in the NFL in forced fumbles. Why don't you just do the same thing and you can be successful? He said we want to have a different approach. We want to be ball aware. We want to punch at the ball.
And as far as the run defense, is that going to be a strength of this team, or what are you seeing on that?
Yeah, the defensive line has gotten better just because they've gotten more experienced. Lucas Van Ness is coming off a back injury, and they needed him to be good because first round pick a couple of years ago. But Rashawn Gary looks great. Kenny Clark is coming off an injury last year that he said definitely halted his growth as a player. So yeah, that defensive line has gotten better because they've gotten more experience. You lose TJ Slayton, who went to Cincinnati, but they're looking good with this rookie Nazir Stackhouse if they choose to keep him on the roster. So run defense looks better just because they've grown in age.
All right. Is there any area on the defense that concerns you right now?
Right now, the injuries, Xavier McKinney's out for the rest of training camp. Nate Hobbs, who had surgery to fix a partial MCL tear, I think it was, or just a knee injury. He's been out for a few weeks, and he was a key signing for this team and showed his aggressiveness early on in camp. So I think a little worried at that point of when those guys come back, if they can just fit right back into the system. You lose Jair Alexander, but right now Keyshawn Nixon and Carrington Valentine look good, but you don't have much depth at that quarterback position. But just as losing Evan Williams last year, the safety because of injury and everything else that surfaced, I think the biggest concern right now is when are you going to get X and Nate Hobbs back, and will their effectiveness be the same because they haven't played real game reps in a couple weeks?
All right. Well, I know you cover the Packers, but do you feel or have any feel on the perception from everybody, the team in Wisconsin towards the Lions this year? Any thoughts on what you're expecting out of them?
Expecting out of the Lions?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you would agree with this. The social media rush of you lost your offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. So what consistency does that, what does that affect? I think that's the only thing is you realize the talent of the team, but everyone just wants to see, can Dan Campbell run a well-oiled ship without his, the 2 horsemen by his side?
All right. Well, then let's hit up prediction time here. How do you think the division's going to go this year, 1 through 4 spots? Do you have any feeling on that?
Right now, it's changed from my feeling a week ago. I think a week ago, I would have said the Packers win the division narrowly, Lions second, Bears and Vikings, you can kind of toss them in at 3-4. But because of all the injuries, especially at the wide receiver position. I mean, once Jaden Reed and Dontavian Wicks went out, you're wondering, like, does this team have anyone that can stay healthy? I think right now you can't put anyone above the Lions because they didn't really. I mean, it's not like they changed that much outside of the OC and DC. So right now, my feeling is Lions, Packers, and then kind of intertwine Vikings, Bears based off if the Bears can stay healthy at O-line and if that new O-line is actually revamped or if it's just a facade and smoke and mirrors. And with the Vikings, I mean, JJ McCarthy, I don't know. Right? Is JJ McCarthy going to be something? We didn't think Sam Darnold would, and then he got a massive contract in Seattle. So I think right now, because of the injuries, the Lions still have the upper hand. That will obviously change based off what we see in week one.
All right. Cam, any final thoughts? Anything you think the Lions fans should know about the Packers or the NFC North before we get out of here?
I feel like Lions fans do not care about the Packers, right? With their success over the last couple of years, I don't think they need to worry about them. But I do think that whenever, you guys get to Lambeau in September, there should be a thought in the back of their mind, like, okay, obviously this game will matter, but what happens post week one, right? Because you can't take too much stock in week one. We've seen that with every team. I mean, think about even the Chiefs, like they've started hot and they haven't started hot, and it doesn't matter because they still win the Super Bowl. So I think for Lions fans, when you look at this Packers team, you're worried about the same cast of characters. And I think what becomes worrisome is the Packers have stayed the same for the most part. So how have they grown as a team? Because there haven't been a lot of guys out the door, haven't been a lot of new guys coming in. But right now, I mean, that Detroit team is so talented, especially offensively. I think that when you look at the Packers, how did they improve defensively by adding Nate Hobbs, by adding Isaiah Simmons, by getting guys back from injury? Because whenever the Lions offense was on the field, they torched the Packers defense and vice versa, right? The defense did well against the Packers offense. So how have the Packers grown based off their growth in age is the one area of concern if I'm a Lions fan looking at this Green Bay squad. But outside of that, I mean, you worry about yourselves, right? I think that's what the Packers have said ad nauseum is like, we can't control what they do. We can only control what we do.
All right. Excellent points, Cam. Greatly appreciate all the insights. Again, folks, that's Cam Easier, sports reporter for the CBS affiliate WFRV TV out of Green Bay. Cam, thanks again for joining the show and sharing all that information.
Of course. Thanks, Matthew. I appreciate it. And we're Syracuse guys, so we don't ever stop talking. So apologize in advance for my over talking. It's one of the skills on my resume. You see additional skills and it's talking, and more talking. So I appreciate it.
Once again, great insights from Cam on the team and training camp. Last year, the Lions swept the division, which means they went 2-0 against the Packers. Detroit's actually won 6 of the last 7 with Green Bay. Now, most of those games were close, but that is a pretty nice record over the last 7 meetings. The question is, what will this year look like? We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. Will it be more of the same starting in week 1 in Lambeau? Or will Jordan Love and Green Bay change the narrative this season? Let us know. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, tell your friends and family about the show. You can find us on social media as well as most major streaming platforms. We'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, reviews. Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.